First tonight, the community outrage over the sentencing of Thomas Kelly's killer. On the 7th of July last year, Thomas was enjoying his first night out in Sydney's King's Cross with his new girlfriend. At 18, he had the world at his feet, intelligent, good-looking, with a great sense of humour. But all that ended when a thug came out of the shadows and King hit Thomas. Ralph and Kathy Kelly rushed to be by their son's side, but the force of the punch and the impact with the ground had knocked the life out of him. They never got to say goodbye. On Friday, Thomas's killer, Kieran Loveridge, was sentenced to just 4 years in prison, despite a potential maximum of 25 years. It sparked questions about the experience of the judge and the earlier role of the prosecutor in horse-trading a murder charge in exchange for a guilty plea to manslaughter. There are also calls for a complete overhaul of sentencing guidelines. I sat down with Ralph and Kathy Kelly this weekend as they struggled to come to terms with a justice system that seems stacked against them. You've had a bit more time now to let the sentence sink in. Can you make any sense of that decision that in the eyes of the law, your son's life was worth so little?
I don't know. We kept getting told by the prosecutors and so forth along the way that we should never ever think about whatever the sentence was as being what Thomas's life was worth. But it's very difficult not to think that, you know, and you certainly do wonder if it was the person who was making that decision's child, whether they would be so quick in making a decision like that.
I think what's really difficult is that when you have someone in your family who's been murdered, and we do believe that this was murder as a family, that you hope to have a support network from the people who'll support you and actually take it through to the end for you with a favourable outcome. But in the last 12 months, we've spent the whole year fighting for Thomas in a legal system that just doesn't care.
I get the sense you feel like you've been abandoned by the legal system.
It all just seems to be that the entire process seems to be protecting the criminal and not the family that's involved, or certainly Thomas, you know, and I think that's the biggest disappointment of all.
But you're the victims here.
But it's not seen like that, and the community is saying, we've had enough of this, something has to change. You know, the Premier and the Attorney-General now have to stand up and make those changes for the sake of the community. We can't just sit back and have a state system where the law is just so out of touch with what the community need.
In sentencing, the judge said that Kieran Loveridge stood a good chance of rehabilitation. I guess I wonder, what about punishment? Do you feel that he's been punished appropriately?
No. There was no remorse. The talk in the papers about him, you know, breaking down in the witness stand, I didn't see any tears, you know, and I just, the other thing that the judge said was that, you know, he feels that he won't reoffend. How can anybody make that statement? His criminal record goes back to when he was a young teenager. He stole his teacher's car when he was 15. He glassed a boy when he was 16, and that was downgraded from grievous bodily harm to actual bodily harm. And then he was given, on the 7th of June, exactly a month before Thomas was killed, he was given conditional liberty for that particular crime. If Kieran Loveridge had have been in a juvenile detention centre or some kind of corrective centre for all his crimes, and particularly that crime of glassing somebody, Thomas would be alive today. And I think the law has to be accountable for that. And why should we all be losing our loved ones because the legal system is failing us?
When you heard that sentence, 4 years, what was your first reaction?
I think I screamed, but that was the other thing. It wasn't the top end of the manslaughter scale. So that we knew at the moment he said that it was at the lower end of the manslaughter scale. We knew that there was not going to be much of a sentence. So
Loveridge hid in the shadows that night. He leapt out. He king hit your son, knocking him to the ground and killing him. It was a cowardly act and it was unprovoked. Is that at the low end of manslaughter?
No.
No. No.
Thomas had no chance. He'd been out of a taxi for 2 minutes, and then 2 minutes later he was dead.
You had to previously endure the DPP downgrading the charge from murder to manslaughter. Do you regret that now? Do you wish that that had been fought harder?
Oh, we always thought that, didn't we? We fought all along.
We asked them never to downgrade it. We pleaded with them not to downgrade it.
We didn't have any say. The reason it was downgraded was, and they were happy to accept that, is because then it doesn't go to trial. And, you know, without being too critical of, you know, the DPP's department, you know, they're nice people, and I guess they're just doing their job within the realms of the law. But we have been fighting that constantly, you know, even to the point that sometimes people would refuse to email us, or we'd get notification, you know, always after 6 o'clock on a Friday night of what was about to take place the following week. And it was just like nobody wanted to talk to us.
There's been some criticism of Justice Campbell and his lack of experience in handling criminal matters. Should a more experienced judge have been appointed to this trial, given its profile? Well,
we were baffled that we were given a civil judge. And I asked the Crown Prosecutor, that said, can you just tell me why it was a civil judge and not a criminal judge? And she did go on to tell me, I believe, that he has always had a great deal of interest and followed the criminal side of the law.
In handing down that sentence, he relied on 6 other cases where very light sentences were given to young offenders. There was no mention of more severe cases of manslaughter, more severe penalties and sentencing at all. Do you think he took the soft option?
Yes.
What would you like to see happen to Kieran Loveridge?
I don't think I could say that on television, to be honest.
I think what we're trying to do now is move on, somehow move on.
How do you?
I don't know.
You have to. We have 2 other younger children. We have to move on for their sake. We're emotionally wrecked, physically wrecked, mentally wrecked.
You see people down the street, they say, how are you? And you go, I'm fine, I'm good. And you come home and you burst into tears. You know, there hasn't been a night that I haven't gone to sleep in tears. I wake up and the first thing I think about is Thomas. And I cry for what he's lost.
You've been robbed of your son.
Yeah, for no reason. It's given us, we all have life sentences now. Every day we think about Thomas, we feel Thomas. I imagine when I'm driving to Sydney, I imagine him sitting next to me, turning my radio to different channels, you know, putting on his CDs, you know, all the little annoying things that your children do. And now you just miss it, and you miss it deeply.
You raised him to be a good kid. I'm thinking he'd be pretty proud of the fight that you've put up so far.
A fight we should never have had to be a part of.
And you don't think that you have to fight the legal system to find justice?
The sentence does no honour for Thomas's memory at all.
No.
No.
How would you like your son remembered?
We'd like to see the law changed.
Yeah.
So that other people don't have to go through this, so that they know they're being protected by the government, so that if there's a violent act committed, that the government is there to actually support you, not just to destroy you.
Yeah.
We feel destroyed, we feel let down, we felt let down the whole way through the whole process.